This is Eastland Radio Repertory Theater. For more information, go to eastlandradiotheater.weebly.com or email eastlandradiotheater@usa.com. The following is for entertainment purposes only. All copyrights are held by their original authors.
The Columbia Network takes pleasure in bringing you Suspense. Suspense. Columbia's play theater of outstanding thrillers. Produced and directed by William Spear and scored by Bernard Herrmann. The notable melodramas from fiction and stage and screen from the world's great literature of entertaining excitement. Presented each week to bring you to the edge of your chair. To keep you in suspense. Tonight's story, by America's distinguished author-playwright Owen Johnson, gathers its suspense in a very gentle way. It doesn't have a spectacular finish, garnished with revolver shots. There are no graveyard watches. There's not so much as a single lifeless body, identified or unidentified. It's a tale told in a club room, the Artists and Writers Club in New York. A tale of high-class robbery and suspicion, and of how some ladies and gentlemen nervously counted 100 in the dark.
That was a fine meal. Me for the club anytime.
Here, we can all sit here, Quinty.
Yes, if you'll just draw up that chair for Mr. Peters.
Oh, yeah. Here you are, Mr. Peters.
Thank you. Do you all know Peters? This is Mr. Steingall.
How do you do?
I know you. Mr. Golier.
Oh, I think we've met.
Oh, yes. How are you? Oh, you know each other.
Yes.
And the one who drew up the chair, Mr. Rankin.
How do you do?
Well, I guess we're all acquainted now.
To get back to our table discussion, Quinny.
Oh, yes. How about a drink? Who'll join me?
Oh,
yeah, pleasure. Fine. John. Well, now, Steingall, as I said, there are only half a dozen stories in the world. What is more to the point? There's every reason
Yes, sir.
What? Oh, 5 with soda, John.
Yes, sir.
Now, where was I? Oh, yes. What is more to the point, gentlemen, is the small number of human relations that are so simple and yet so fundamental that they can be eternally played upon, redressed, and reinterpreted in every language and every age, and yet remain inexhaustible in the possibility of variation.
Well, that's true, of course.
It's very possible.
Take the eternal triangle. 2 men and a woman, or 2 women and a man. Its variations extend to thousands. That right, Rankin?
Well, in a way.
Ah, here we are. Set them down right there, John.
Very well, sir.
A little soda. Here you are.
Thank you.
And you.
Thank you.
Soda, Peter? Yes, please. Another one. Here you are.
Thanks.
And here's yours.
Thank you.
And now, a little soda in mine. Well, here's to you all.
Cheers.
I'm afraid we can't see eye to eye, Quinny. I believe there are situations, original situations, that are independent of your human emotions, that exist just because they are situations, accidental and nothing else.
As for instance?
Well, I'll just cite an ordinary one that happens to come to my mind. In a group of 5 men, such as we are here, a theft takes place. One man is the thief. Which one? Now, I'd like to know what emotion that interprets. And yet it certainly is an original theme at the bottom of the whole literature.
It's not the same thing at all.
Detective stories.
I could answer that the situation you give can be traced back to the commonest of human emotions, Curiosity.
I think Quinny has you there, Rankin.
What is the peculiar fascination that the detective problem exercises over the human mind? You will say curiosity. Yes and no. Admit at once that the whole art of a detective story consists in the statement of the problem. Anyone can do it. I can do it. Steingall can do it. Rankin, I believe even you can do it. The solution doesn't count. It is usually banal. It should be prohibited. What interests us is, can we guess it? There you have it, the problem, the detective story. Now, why the fascination? I'll tell you. It appeals to our curiosity. Yes, but deeper, to a sort of intellectual vanity. 5 men present. The theft takes place. Who's the thief? Who will guess it first? Whose brains will show its superior cleverness? You see? That's all. That's all there is to it.
Out of all of which, the interesting thing is that Rankin has supplied the reason why the supply of detective fiction is inexhaustible. It does all come down to the simplest terms. 5 possibilities, 1 answer.
Well, the reason is that the situation does constantly occur. It's a situation that any of us might get into any time.
Yes, I know of an incident of that kind that happened to a friend of mine last month.
Of course, gentlemen. You are glorifying commonplaces. Every crime, I tell you, expresses itself in the terms of the picture puzzle that you feed to your 6-year-old. It's only the variation that is interesting. Well, take the well-known instance of the visitor at a club and the rare coin, for example. You all know that story. You've heard it, haven't you?
I don't think I have.
Sure.
Why, it's very well known.
Oh, go ahead, Quinny. Tell it.
A distinguished visitor is brought into a club. A dozen men, say, present at dinner, long table. Conversation finally veers around to curiosities and relics. One of the members present then takes from his pocket what he announces as one of the rarest coins in existence. Passes it around the table. Coin travels back and forth, everyone examining it. And the conversation goes to another topic. All at once, the owner calls for his coin. It is nowhere to be found. Everyone looks at everyone else. First, they suspect a joke. Then it becomes serious. The coin is immensely valuable. Who has taken it? The owner is a gentleman. Does the gentlemanly, idiotic thing, of course. Laughs as he knows someone is playing a practical joke on him and that the coin will be returned tomorrow. The others refuse to leave the situation so. One man proposes that they all submit to a search. Everyone gives his assent until it comes to the stranger. He refuses, curtly, roughly, without giving any reason. Uncomfortable silence. The man is a guest. No one knows him particularly well, but still he is a guest. One member tries to make him understand that no offense is offered, that the suggestion was simply to clear the atmosphere. The stranger becomes very firm, very proud, and says, I refuse to allow my person to be searched, and I refuse to give the reason for my action. Another silence. The visitor evidently has the coin, but he is their guest, and etiquette protects him. Nice situation, eh?
Well,
What's the answer?
The table is cleared. A waiter removes a dish of fruit, and there, under the ledge of the plate, where it's been pushed, is the coin. Banal explanation, eh? Of course. Solutions always should be. At once, everyone apologizes to him, whereupon the visitor rises and says, now I can give you the reason for my refusal to be searched. There are only 2 known specimens of that coin in existence, and the second happens to be here in my vest pocket.
That's rather obvious.
Of course, the story is well invented, but the turn to it is very nice. Very nice, indeed.
Well, I don't know. Ending is very unsatisfactory. The visitor should have had on him not another coin, but something absolutely different, something destructive, say, of a woman's reputation. And a great tragedy should have been threatened by the casual misplacing of the coin.
Well, I've heard the same story told in a dozen different ways.
Oh, it's happened 100 times. It must continually happen.
I know of one extraordinary instance. In fact, the most extraordinary instance of this sort I've ever heard.
Peters, you rascal. I see you've been quietly letting us set the stage for you.
Well, it's not a story that will please everyone.
Why not?
Because you will want to know what no one can ever know.
It has no conclusion, then.
Yes and no. As far as it concerns a woman, quite the most remarkable woman I've ever met, the story is complete.
Do I know the woman?
Possibly. Probably, I should say.
Uh-huh.
As a matter of fact, this should be particularly interesting to you because I believe that most of you are acquainted with the people involved. The names, of course, are disguised. I think Yes, I have. Just time before I catch my train to tell it to you. Mrs. Rita Kildare inhabited a charming bachelor girl studio. Very elegant. With a duplex pattern and one of the buildings just off Central Park West. She knew very nearly everyone in that indescribable society in New York that's drawn from all levels and that imposes but one condition for membership, to be amusing. In this mingled society, her invitations were eagerly sought. Her dinners were spontaneous, and the discussions, though gay and usually daring, were invariably under the control of wit and good taste. On the Sunday night of this adventure, she had, according to her custom, sent away her Filipino butler and invited to an informal chafing dish supper 7 of her more unusual friends. At 7 o'clock, having finished dressing, she put in order her bedroom, which formed a sort of free passage between the studio and a small dining room to the kitchen beyond. Then, going into the studio, she struck a match and was about to light the candlesticks which illuminated the room when the bell rang. And a Mr. Flanders, a broker, compact, nervously alive, well-groomed, was waiting as she opened the door.
Well, you're early.
On the contrary, you are late.
Well, in any case, hello, and come inside. Here, let me take your things.
Thank you. Well, I'm the first, I suppose.
Of course. And since you are, you can be a good boy and help me with the candles.
Delighted. Who's to be here tonight?
The Enos Jacksons.
I thought they were separated.
Not yet.
How interesting. Only you, dear lady, would dream of serving us a couple on the verge.
It is interesting, isn't it?
Assuredly. Where did you know Jackson?
Through the Warings. Jackson's a rather doubtful person, isn't he?
Well, let's call him a very sharp lawyer. They tell me, though, he's been gambling pretty much. In deep.
How about yourself?
Me? I'm a bachelor. If I lose my shirt, it makes no difference.
Is that possible?
Probable, even. Who else is coming?
Oh, Maud Lily. You know her?
No, I don't think so.
You met her here some time ago. A journalist.
Oh, yes, of course. I'd forgotten.
Mr. Harris, a clubman, is coming, and the Stanley Cheevers.
Stanley Cheevers? Are we going to gamble?
Don't tell me you object.
Certainly not. Only the Cheevers. They play quite a game. Yes, well united. They have an unusual streak of good luck. Oh, by the way, it's Jackson, isn't it, who is so attractive to Mrs. Cheever?
Quite right.
What a charming party. Where does Maud Lily come in?
Don't joke. She's in a desperate way.
And young Harris?
Oh, he used to make the salad and cream the chicken.
See the whole party. I, of course, am to add the element of respectability.
Of what? Don't play baby with me, my dear Flanders.
I apologize.
That's better.
No one, of course, knows who else is coming.
No one, of course.
The Stanley Cheevers entered. A short, fat man with a vacant, fat face and slow-moving eye, and his wife, voluble, nervous, overdressed, and pretty. Mr. Harris came in with Maud Lily. A woman, straight, dark, Indian, great masses of somber hair, held in a little too loosely for neatness, with thick, quick lips and eyes that rolled away from the person who was talking to her. The Enos Jacksons were late, and still agitated as they entered. His forehead had not quite banished the scowl, nor her eyes the scorn. He was of the type that never lost his temper, but caused others to lose theirs. Mrs. Jackson seemed fastened to her husband by an invisible leash. You looked at her curiously and wondered what such a nature would do in a crisis, with a lurking sense of a woman who carried with her her own impending tragedy. As soon as the company had been completed and the incongruity of the selection had been perceived, a smile of malicious anticipation ran the rounds, which the hostess cut short by saying,
Well, now that everyone's here, this is the order for the night. You can quarrel all you want, you can whisper all the gossip you can think of about one another, but everyone is to be amusing. Also, everyone is to help with dinner. Nothing formal, nothing serious. We may all be bankrupt, divorced, or dead tomorrow, but tonight we'll be gay. That's the invariable rule of the house.
For she's a jolly good fellow. For she's a jolly good fellow. For she's a jolly good fellow. Which nobody can deny.
Oh, thanks, everyone. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll get on with the cooking. Harris, I'll need you.
Right with you.
May I be of any help? Thank you, Ma, dear. Oh, Mrs. Cheever, you might come along, too. All right.
This is an adorable bedroom.
Oh, thank you, dear. Now for my apron. Oh, there it is. Tie me up in the back, will you please, Maud?
Of course. There you are.
Fine, thanks. Now just let me get my rings off, and I'll be all ready to go to work. Oh, this is such a lovely apartment, Mrs. Kildare. Thanks. Soap and water always seem to do it. There.
Your rings are so beautiful.
They are nice, aren't they? But there's only one that's very valuable, the sapphire.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Let me see. Oh, it must be very valuable. It cost $10,000 6 years ago. It's been my talisman ever since. For the moment, however, I'm a cook.
You're not going to leave the rings there.
Why, of course. Now, I'm the cook. Maud Lily, you're the scullery maid. Harris is the chef, and we're all under his orders. Mrs. Cheever, did you ever peel onions?
Oh, good heavens, no.
Well, there are no onions to peel. All you have to do is help set the table.
Under their hostess's gay guidance, the 7 guests began to circulate busily through the rooms, laying the table, grouping the chairs, opening bottles, and preparing the material for the chafing dishes. Mrs. Kildare, in the kitchen, ransacked the icebox, and with her own hand shredded the chicken and measured the cream.
Flanders, carry this in carefully. Cheever, stop watching your wife and put the salad bowl on the table. Everything ready, Harris?
All set.
All right, everyone sit down. I'll be right in.
She went into her bedroom, took off her apron, and hung it in the closet. Then, going to her dressing table, she drew the hat pin around which were her rings from the pincushion and carelessly slipped them on her fingers. But all at once, she frowned and looked quickly at her hand. Only 2 rings were there. The 3rd ring, the sapphire, was missing.
Stupid,
she said to herself, and returned to her dressing table. Immediately, she stopped. She remembered quite clearly putting the hat pin through the 3 rings. She made no attempt to search further, but remained without moving, her fingers slowly drumming on the table. Who had taken the ring? Each of her guests had had a dozen opportunities in the course of the time she'd been busy in the kitchen. She ran over their characters and their situations as she knew them. Strangely enough, at each, her mind stopped upon some reason that might explain a sudden temptation.
Find out nothing this way. That's not the important thing to me just now. The important thing is to get the ring back.
And slowly, deliberately, she began to walk back and forth, her clenched hand beating the deliberate, rhythmic measure of her journey. 5 minutes later, as Harris, installed as chef over the chafing dish, was giving directions, spoon in the air, Mrs. Kildare came into the room like a lengthening shadow. Her entrance had been made with scarcely a perceptible sound, and yet each guest was aware of it at the same moment, with a little nervous start.
Heavens, dear lady. You come in on us like a Greek tragedy. What is it you have for us? A surprise?
I have something to say to you. Mr. Enos Jackson.
Yes, Miss Kildare?
Kindly do as I ask you.
Certainly.
Go to the door.
Go to the door?
Please.
Yes?
Lock it. And bring me the key.
Here you are.
You've locked it?
As you wish me to.
Thank you. Now, the bedroom door. Would you do the same?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Cheever,
Yeah?
would you blow out all the candles except the candelabra on the table?
Blow out all the candles.
Except the candelabra.
All right.
For goodness sake, Mrs. Kildare. What is it? I am getting terribly worked up. My nerves are all
Sorry,
over.
Mrs. Jackson.
That's the last candle.
All right. Now listen. My sapphire ring has just been stolen.
You don't mean it.
The ring's been taken within the last 20 minutes. I'm not going to mince words. The ring has been taken, and the thief is among you.
But Mrs. Kildare, is it possible?
Yes, Mrs. Cheever. There's not the slightest doubt. 3 of you were in the bedroom when I placed my rings on the pincushion.
Quite true. I was in the room when she took them off. The sapphire ring was on top.
Each of you has passed through there a dozen times since. My sapphire ring is gone, and one of you has taken it. Now listen. I'm not going to mince words. I'm not going to stand on ceremony. But I'm going to have my ring back. Listen to me carefully. I'm going to have that ring back. And until I do, not a soul shall leave this room. I don't care who's taken it. All I want is my ring. Now, I'm going to make it possible for whoever took it to restore it without possibility of detection. The doors are locked and will stay locked. I'm going to blow out the remaining candles in the candelabra, and I'm going to count 100 slowly. There'll be an absolute darkness. No one will know or see what's done. But if, at the end of that time, the ring is not here on the table, I shall telephone the police and have everyone in this room searched. Am I quite clear? Everyone take his place about the table and remain standing, please. That's it. That'll do. Now, I'll blow out the candles and count 100. No more, no less. Remember, either I get that ring, or everyone in this room will be searched. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45,
Foot slipped off the chair. I'm
46,
sorry.
47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73,
The ring.
74,
There it is.
75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88,
Oh, really?
89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. Well,
it is there.
Mr. Cheever, you may hand it to me. Well, now that that's over, we can have a very gay little supper. The lights, someone.
And there you are, gentlemen.
Oh, I say, Peters, that's not all.
Absolutely.
The story ends there?
Story ends there.
But who took the ring?
What? You never found out?
Never.
No clue?
None.
I'm not sure I like the story.
It's no story at all.
Permit me, it is a story. And it is complete. In fact, I consider it unique because it has none of the banalities of a solution and leaves the problem even more confused than at the start.
Well, I don't see...
Of course you don't see, my dear Enkin. You do not see that any solution would be commonplace, whereas no solution leaves an extraordinary intellectual problem.
Oh, how so?
Well, in the first place, whether the situation actually happened or not, which is in itself a mere triviality, Peters has constructed it in a masterly way, the proof of which is that he has made me listen. Any of those present might have taken the ring. There are, therefore, 7 solutions, all possible and all logical. But beyond this is left a great intellectual problem.
Oh, how so?
Was it a woman who lacked the necessary courage to continue? Or was it a man who repented his first impulse? Is a man or is a woman the greater natural criminal?
Oh, that's simple, Quinny. A woman took it, of course.
On the contrary, it was a man, for the second action was more difficult than the first.
The man, certainly. The restoration of the ring was a logical decision.
You see? Personally, I incline to a woman, for the reason that a weaker feminine nature is strangely susceptible to the domination of her own sex. There you are. We could meet and debate the subject year in and year out and never agree.
I recognize most of the characters, Peters. Mrs. Kildare, of course, is all you say of her. An extraordinary woman. The story is quite characteristic of her. Flanders, I'm not sure of, but I think I know him.
I'm positive I do.
Did it really happen?
Exactly as I told it.
The only one I don't recognize is Harris,
Your humble servant.
What? You, Peters? You were there?
I was there. I was Harris.
I beg your pardon, gentlemen.
Oh, yes, what is it, John?
Mr. Peters, sir, your train. You told me to remind you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I didn't know it was so late. Will you gentlemen pardon me?
Huh? Of course.
Nice to meet you all. Night.
Curious chap.
Extraordinary.
Well, now, I wonder.
I wonder if we're wondering the same thing, gentlemen.
And so, with the enigmatic smile of Mr. Peters, or Harris, ends 100 in the Dark, Owen Johnson's smooth story which gave us tonight's Suspense. Suspense is produced by William Spear. Tonight's radio drama was written by Jack Anson Fink, directed by John Dietz, and scored by Bernard Herrmann. Eric Dressler was Mr. Peters. Alice Frost played Mrs. Kildare, and Ted Osborne, Quinny. Others in the cast were Helen Lewis, Joan Shea, Henriette Kay, Frank Reddick, Paul Luther, Stephen Schnabel, Ian Martin, and Barry Kroger. With this evening's performance, Columbia brings to a conclusion the present series of Suspense. If you've liked these broadcasts, CBS would be pleased to hear from you. Suspense has been a series presented for your relaxation and enjoyment by the Columbia Broadcasting System.
If you are enjoying this presentation, please let us know. Please email us at eastlandradiotheater@usa.com. For more information, go to eastlandradiotheater.weebly.com. This is Eastland Radio Repertory Theater. For more information, go to eastlandradiotheater.weebly.com or email eastlandradiotheater@usa.com. The following is for entertainment purposes only. All copyrights are held by their original authors.
Suspense. Now let's see. Suspect, suspectant, suspend. Here we are. Suspense. The condition of mental uncertainty, usually accompanied by apprehension or anxiety. Fear of something which is about to occur, as do not keep me any longer in suspense.
For our story of suspense tonight, we invite you to enjoy The Devil in the Summer House by John Dixon Carr.
Somewhere along the Hudson, perhaps not far from Tarrytown, there is a modest house in its own grounds. Behind it, in a spacious garden, stands a summer house of evil memory. More than 25 years ago, a man shot himself, or at least died, in that summer house. They found Major Kenyon with a scorched bullet hole in his head and a weapon beside him. But we are in the present now. The latticed summer house has grown heavy with vines, and only the other evening 2 men came into that garden at twilight, over the shaggy grass, as a storm was brewing along the Hudson. 2 men, the lawyer from New York.
Who's there?
And Captain Burke of the homicide squad.
Easy, my friend, easy. I was just going to ask you the same thing.
My name is Parker. I'm an attorney. You're not Captain Burke.
Yeah, the very same and no other. I thought I recognized you, Mr. Parker. Must be something important to bring you so far from New York at this time of night.
I was in Tarrytown anyway. I thought there'd be a housekeeper here, but I don't see any light.
You've got business here?
Yes, in a way. Have you?
I don't know. I'll tell you better after you tell me what brought you to a place that no one has lived in for 10 years.
Tell me, Captain. Did you ever get an anonymous letter from a dead man? Did you?
No, I can't say I did. The letter's anonymous. How do you know the man's dead?
Because they're all dead. Every last one of them. Dead and under the ground, where they can't be hurt any longer. Look. There's the summer house where Jerry Kenyon used to work. There are the windows of the library and the dining room. Looking toward it. Confound this lightning.
Makes the windows blaze, don't it?
Jerry Kenyon hadn't a care in the world. Yet he shot himself. I'll show you the letter.
Now, look, Mr. Parker, I couldn't read anything in this light. But if we can get inside the house...
Certainly we can get into the house. I was the family attorney. I've got the keys. Why should a dead person send me a letter?
No lights working, eh? But you got a flashlight, I see. Came here prepared for anything, eh?
This is the library. There were always candles on the mantel. Yes, there they are. Have you a match, Captain?
Yes, I'll light them.
That's better. Same old heavy furniture. Same old thick carpet. Same old globe map.
Now, Mr. Parker, this letter that you were talking about.
Yeah. Read it.
Hey, wait a minute. This thing is dated November 2nd, 1918.
That's right, and be careful of that paper. You see how old it is? But it was mailed yesterday.
From where?
I don't remember. I didn't keep the envelope. Read it.
Dear Joe.
In case you didn't know it, I'm Joe.
Dear Joe, if you want to know how Major Kenyon really died...
But we know how he died. It was suicide.
Are you sure it was? Whoever wrote this letter doesn't seem to think so. If you want to know how Major Kenyon really died, look in the third drawer of the desk in the library. Press hard at the back of the drawer. Yours very truly. It's not signed.
That's right.
Now, you're sure you don't know who wrote that letter?
This is the first time I've been back in this room, Captain. It was almost a home to me once. There's the chair where Isabel sat on the afternoon it happened. Isabel was Jerry Kenyon's wife. Beautiful woman. There's the door that the maid let me in by that afternoon. You know, Captain, seems to me they're all here tonight.
Who?
We stand beneath the sounding rafter, and the walls around us are bare as they echo our peals of laughter. It seems that the dead are there.
Yet we stand to our glasses steady.
You know it?
I was in my school reader. How does the rest of it go?
Yet we stand to our glasses steady and drink to our comrades' eyes. Here's a glass to the dead already. Hurrah for the next that dies. Excuse me, Captain. I don't know what's come over me talking that way. I was very fond of these people.
Are you going to look in the desk drawer?
This is a lot of nonsense.
Then why are you here, Mr. Parker?
Jerry Kenyon was always a happy man. At least that's what I always thought. Big, boisterous fellow.
Yeah?
He had a good position with Vitaton. You know, the phonograph company.
Yeah, sure, I know.
But he'd just been made a major in the Army. 1917. There was a war on then, too, if you remember.
I remember. To make the world safe for democracy.
Old days. Old heartaches. Old memories. I remember that blazing hot day in August. When all the windows were up. I remember this room. And Isabel, that was Jerry's wife, sitting in that chair, knitting. I remember...
Oh, yes, Kitty. What is it?
There's a man to see you, Miss Kenyon. He says his name's Parker.
Yes, I'm expecting him. Show him in, please.
All right, ma'am. So I take your knitting in your knitting bag?
Why should you take my knitting?
I don't know, Miss Kenyon. I just wondered. You can come in now.
Thank you.
Hello, Joe.
Hello, Isabel. You sent for me?
Joe, I must apologize for Kitty. Servants are getting to be a problem nowadays.
She looks pretty enough to get along.
Oh, Kitty's got large ideas. She wants to go on the stage, if you please, and do imitations, like Miss Draper. She only knew how hard it was acting all your life.
Isabel, you've been crying.
I have not. At least...
Is that why you sent for me?
I've missed you. You haven't been here in over a week, Joe.
I had an idea Jerry was getting a little tired of having me around this house.
Oh, no, Joe. Why, Jerry...
Yes, what about Jerry?
I wish I knew, Joe. That's why I wanted you here.
Where is he, by the way? I want to say goodbye to him before he leaves.
He's probably out in the summer house where he works with all those papers. He's got a lot of work to catch up with. He's going overseas tomorrow.
Yes, I know.
He's out there. He's been out there all day. His last day here. And I've been alone.
That sounded like a shot.
Yes, it was a shot, Joe,
No,
dear.
Doesn't seem to worry you.
It's only Paul, Jerry's brother, Paul.
Oh, thought you'd gotten him off your hands for good.
Jerry asked him out. He got here 2 nights ago.
That doesn't make it any easier for you, does it?
No, I don't mind. Jerry's fixed him up with a pistol range in the cellar. Paul's a terribly bad shot. Not like the rest of us. You don't seem to like it, Joe. Shall I have Kitty go down and tell him?
No, it's bearable. As long as he keeps away.
Poor Joe.
But, about Jerry, who is it this time?
Joe, Jerry's been home 5 days on leave from camp. Well, never mind what camp. But he spent 4 evenings of those 5 with that Fisk woman.
Diane Fisk? The redhead with all the money?
Oh, she got money?
Well,
She must have some attraction then. Please understand me, Joe. It's not that I'm jealous any longer. It's just
no,
that
of course not.
Jerry goes his way and I go mine. I May not be without admirers myself, if it comes to that.
You've no idea how true that is, Isabel.
No, I was thinking about Jerry. He may not always be lucky. He may meet some girl who's not as broad-minded as I am. And then when he gives her the go-by... Paul must be getting really furious down in that cellar. He's not hitting anything.
You must be using a lot of ammunition.
Now, your trouble, Joe, is that you're too much of a gentleman. And if you really want to see Jerry, there he is now.
Where?
Just standing in the door of the summer house. Look out the window.
It's finally bright out there.
Doesn't he look noble in his new uniform? Sam Brown belt and revolver and everything. Look how he turns around and waves his cap at us. Like a real soldier.
Real soldiers don't exactly wave their caps, do they?
He does. Jerry? Jerry!
Hello there!
Jerry, Joe Parker's here.
Who?
Joe Parker. He wants to see you.
Well, give him a drink or something. I'll be up in a minute.
Into the summer house again. Not a care in the world,
Now,
Henry.
listen, Isabel, you've got to slow down. You'll be crying again in a minute. Come on over here and sit down.
Light hurts my eyes, that's all.
Well, then we'll just pull these blinds. We'll still be able to see. There, how's that?
It's better, thanks.
Now, can I get you anything?
Oh, no, you heard the Great White Chief's orders. I'm to get you something. What do you have, Joe? A highball?
Don't bother with that.
Oh, it's no bother. Everything's out in the dining room here. The Iceman didn't deliver today of all days, so I'm afraid I can't give you any ice. I read in the paper yesterday that we're likely to have automatic ice boxes any day now. Things that freeze ice by electricity or something. Do you believe that, Joe?
I doubt it. Listen, Isabel.
Here you are. It's not cold at all. It's the best I could do.
Thanks very much. What I wanted to say was, couldn't you get that brother of yours to give up practicing now? Hasn't he done his good deed for the day?
Yes, maybe he has. I'll ring for Kitty.
You don't have to call me, Miss Canyon. I'm here.
Oh, yes, Kitty. What is it?
It's only to tell you there's another visitor. This time it's a woman.
Lady, Kitty. Call her a lady, please.
Oh, maybe. She says her name's Diane Fisk.
Diane Fisk, that's Jerry.
Kitty, tell the lady I'm not in.
Lady. She's a fine lady. I don't know the truth, my dear. I don't know the truth. Anyway, it's too late, Miss Kenyon. She's coming down the hall now.
My dear Mrs. Kenyon.
How do you do, Diane? This is a friend of ours, Miss Fisk, Miss Parker.
Now, I don't want to intrude, really, I don't. I wouldn't have intruded for worlds, especially on a day like this. Isn't it awful? But your husband simply insisted, my dear Mrs. Kenyon. He simply wouldn't take no for an answer.
I'm sure he wouldn't.
Do you know what he's brought from his office as a surprise?
No.
A phonograph recording machine. And he's going to let us use it.
So that we can all hear ourselves talk twice. How nice. Heaven's name, can't somebody stop that firing?
Don't fly off the handle. Take it easy now.
Kitty.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you please go down the cellar and tell Mr. Kenyon's brother he's driving us all crazy? Tell him to stop.
Yes, ma'am.
My dear Mrs. Kenyon, I do hope I haven't offended you in any way. I know I'm a silly little chatterbox. They say people who have red hair often are. Because at your age, you must find the heat very trying.
Don't you think we'd all better sit down?
I
was very much interested in what Miss Fisk said about a phonograph recording machine. Mrs. Kenyon was just talking about a machine to make ice.
Yes. Isn't science wonderful? But I do think it was mean of Major Kenyon to invite me out here and then go and fall asleep in the summer house.
Did you say fall asleep?
Yes, of course.
How did you know?
Well, I came up the back way and I saw him in the summer house with his head forward on the table, taking a nice little snooze.
That's very queer.
Of course, you couldn't see much except in the bright light of the door, but I think I saw him there. I didn't disturb him, naturally.
But I think I'd better disturb him.
Oh, now, please don't trouble on my account.
The fact is, my dear, I don't altogether trust myself in this room. A woman of my age has to conserve her strength, you know. So if you'll just excuse me.
Well, of course, if you... Oh, dear, I just can't think what I'm always saying because I have the best intentions in the world, Mr. Barker. But,
Parker.
Oh, yes, Parker, but I do somehow manage to offend people being so dependent and everything. Except the men, of course. I couldn't offend you, Mr. Parker. Now, could I?
Madam, I'm not sure.
Well, of course, the person I really came to see was Paul, Mr. Kenyon's brother. He's a little young, of course, but he's joining up next month, and I think we should all do our bit, don't you? He has such a pleasant personality. I think he likes me. Why, if he walked in at that door this minute...
Now, how am I ever going to get any place? Someone's always interrupting my revolver practice just when I'm getting to the point where I can... Oh.
Why, Paul.
Good Lord, are you here again?
You're a very untidy object, Paul.
Well, it's pretty untidy in this cellar. And dirty. I've got cockroaches on me, so keep away.
Did you have a good day's shooting?
Swell. One of the best.
Hit the target?
On the only shot that mattered, I hit the target dead center. That sounded like Isabel.
I think it was Isabel.
Why have you got those blinds down? Get them up. What is it? What's wrong with you? What are you looking at through that window?
That was 25 years ago, Captain Burke. We found Jerry Kenyon lying across the table in the summer house. He'd shot himself through the head with his own revolver from the holster. It was lying on the floor beside him.
Shadows, all right. I see.
When Isabel found him, he'd been dead about half an hour.
The doctors proved that, did they?
Yes, that shot had been fired against his head. The front of his uniform cap was powder burned where the bullet entered.
There's no doubt about that.
None at all. We never noticed the real shot
because that young lad was shooting off guns like a maniac in the cellar.
Precisely. Now they're all dead. By accident, illness, they're all gone. Isabel Kenyon died less than a year afterwards. I think she died just because she was so fond of Jerry. I suppose you've guessed my little secret.
Oh, I think I can sort of read between the lines. You were in love with Isabel Kenyon, weren't you?
Yes.
Well, these things happen.
I never let her see it, you understand?
Women know, pretty generally.
So, they're gone. The youngest of them. And I'm left alone with old tunes, old ghosts, wondering why the fellow ever killed himself. Why? Why? And this morning, out of a clear sky, I get a letter saying, if you want to know how Major Kenyon really died, look in the third drawer of the desk in the library. But I tell you, we know how he died.
Well, aren't you going to do it?
Naturally. I've got a key somewhere here that fits the drawer.
Now, listen, Mr. Parker. In my father's country, in Ireland, they got a saying that when a man's going to commit suicide...
I thought of doing that, too.
Then the devil comes in and takes him by the hand and talks to him. They say you can see the devil as plain as I see you, just before you pull the trigger.
The devil must have been in the summer house that afternoon, then.
Oh, no, he wasn't.
What do you mean?
Major Kenyon didn't kill himself. He was murdered.
My dear Captain Burke, the police covered all that at the time. Everybody had an alibi.
They did they?
Well, think of what I've told you. Isabel and I were together all the time. Paul, her brother, was shooting off guns in the cellar.
Yeah?
Diane Fisk.
Yeah, what about her?
Her chauffeur who drove her there swore he saw her walk straight up to the place. She passed the summer house, but didn't stop there.
Well, that checks.
Even Kitty the maid could prove she'd never stirred out of the house until just a minute or so before Isabel went herself.
Oh, and why did the maid have to leave the house at all?
She was taking Jerry the black coffee he drank every afternoon. He'd already been dead half an hour then. And that, my dear Captain, disposes of everybody.
Well, now listen, Mr. Parker. You're a good guy, and I'm not going to hold out on you any longer. You see, I say Major Kenyon was murdered because I know he was murdered.
By an outsider?
By one of the people in the house.
That's impossible.
Is it? Well, why don't you open that desk drawer and see? What time is it?
It's 7:45.
7:45? And I haven't got much time.
For what?
Holy St. Patrick, will you open that drawer?
If it's waited 25 years, my friend, it can wait a minute more. I've got the key somewhere in this But, Jesus, everything the same. Paul never altered when he inherited. Same old desk, same old phonograph, same old... I think this is the key. Yeah, it opens. There's nothing here except one or two old newspapers. Everything very dirty.
The letter says to press hard at the back. Now, have you tried that?
Doesn't seem to. Yes, by George, it does work.
Well?
There seems to be a movable back on a hinge.
Well, what's inside?
Some sort of flat, brown paper parcel sealed with wax. And about as dirty as it can get.
Open it, man. Open it.
I'm going to. It's a phonograph record. There's a plain white label. Something on it written in pencil. I don't see too well nowadays without my glasses.
Here, give it to me. I'll read it to you.
Go on.
A record of how I killed Jerry Kenyon. Say, don't you get it, Mr. Parker? This is the real goods. The murderer's going to tell us his own story 25 years later.
Be careful. Whatever you do, don't drop it.
You seem to be interested enough now.
I don't say I'm not interested. I say I can't believe it.
You know, when you were talking about the dead coming back and that kind of thing, you sure started giving me goose pimples. But that's just what it is, a dead person. Now, there's the phonograph. Put that record on. Let's hear what the ghost says.
Any of them could have made the record, of course. The apparatus was all here.
Don't just stand there by the phonograph. Want to work?
Yes, it works.
Is it wound up?
Yes, it's wound up. Here goes.
Now, look, Mr. Parker. Whose voice do you think it's going to be?
I don't know.
Now, I want to warn you. The voice you're going to hear from there...
Please, be quiet. Listen. I've started it up. Well, speak up. Who killed Jerry Kenyon?
I killed him, Joe, dear.
Isabel.
I'm sorry about it, Joe, but I had to have you for an alibi. And you were so terribly easy to
It's
fool.
only a phonograph record, man. Don't look at it as if it was alive.
You said you and I were always together, Joe, but that wasn't quite true. I left you to go into the dining room and mix a highball, remember?
Yes.
And I was carrying my big knitting bag. Remember that, too? And there was something else in it besides knitting. I'm an awfully good revolver shot, Joe. I told you we were all good except Paul. And the back windows of the dining room face the same way as the back windows of the library.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you.
Jerry was in the summer house. I made a sign to him from the window, and he came to the door there. In bright sunlight, 50 feet away.
True again, Isabel. True
Joe,
again.
don't you know what August heat is in a wooden summer house? Didn't anybody see that no man would be wearing a cap inside on a day like that? Jerry had taken his cap off before he went into the summer house. We saw him do it. He was bareheaded when he came to the door. So I lifted the revolver and shot him through the head. Then I dropped the gun back in my knitting bag and went back into the library with your drink.
Isabel.
Don't talk back to the thing,
There
man.
was
You'll drive me
something else
screwy.
in my knitting bag, too. I had to use it. It was a duplicate of Jerry's army camp with a powder-burned hole already fired through it in the place I wanted.
Very clever of you, Isabel. So I've been the goat for 25 years.
I waited for some time and then slipped out to find the body. I fitted the new cap over Jerry's head in place where it ought to go. I put the old cap in my knitting bag. I took his revolver out of the holster and kept it. The gun that I used, I dropped on the floor beside him. So I proved it was suicide. You see?
You proved it to me.
Joe, listen, I'm very sick. They tell me I'm going to die.
You are dead.
Joe, I'm afraid. I'm going out in the dark, and I don't know what's there.
Don't go away, Isabel. Come
Joe.
on. Just for a minute.
Okay, I've had just about enough of this.
Joe, I want you to tell everybody about it. I want you to tell them how a poor, crazy woman couldn't stand that man any longer, and how...
There. It's cut off, and it's going to stay cut off.
Thank you. I've heard about enough, too. But you can't arrest her now, my friend. You can't arrest her now.
After hearing that, I'm not going to arrest anybody.
Tell me, Captain. Did you know what was on the record?
No. That's why I had to hear it. I knew about it, but I wasn't sure what it had to say. But so help me, I never guessed how hard it would hit you. Man, don't you get it even yet?
Yes, I get it.
Oh, no, you don't. You don't see anything. That was how the fake suicide was managed, yes. That's just how it was all done, bar one or two little things. Only...
Only what?
Only it wasn't Isabel Kenyon who committed the murder.
Did I hear you correctly?
You did?
This is another one of your little jokes, I imagine. Can't you let me alone? Have you some kind of personal spite against me? What did I ever do?
You're going to hear the real truth now if I have to hold you down in that chair. I know Mrs. Kenyon didn't kill her husband because I've just come from talking to the real murderer up the river.
But they're all dead.
Oh, no, they're not. And I haven't got much time either. That clock's just going to strike 8.
What's the time got to do with
Good deal if you'll follow me. Mrs. Kenyon died less than a year after her husband, didn't she?
Yes.
But it wasn't Mrs. Kenyon's voice you just heard on that record.
What?
I'm telling you, the real murderer hated her. Hated her like poison and wanted her blamed for the crime. When Mrs. Kenyon died, the real murderer wrote a letter.
Well?
But she never mailed that letter. She made a lying record of Isabel Kenyon's voice as evidence. Now you figure it out for yourself. Who was pretty enough to take Major Kenyon's eye and strike back like fury when she got thrown over? Who wanted to go on the stage and do impersonations?
Kitty, the maid.
Ah, you're talking sense.
She shot Jerry from the dining room window.
When she couldn't borrow Mrs. Kenyon's knitting bag, she went out to the summer house with a gun and the fake cap wrapped in a napkin on a coffee tray.
She did go out, I remember.
Actually, she got there before Mrs. Kenyon did. But the summer house was dark inside, and Mrs. Kenyon never noticed her. The next day, Kitty wrote that letter, but she couldn't bring herself to send it. So she kept that letter till the day before yesterday. Then one of the boys at Sing Sing...
Wait a minute.
...thinking he was doing her a kind action, put a stamp on it and mailed it.
Did you say Sing Sing?
Yes. They're electrocuting her tonight for the murder of an Italian down at Collier's Hook. I found out about the record, all right. But the one thing I wasn't sure of was that she had done the job alone. Now, frankly, the way you acted, I thought that you might have been in on it, too. Well, that's why I had to hear it through. And it was anything but a joke. And now, here it goes to blazes forever. 8 o'clock. Now she's dead.
And so ends The Devil in the Summer House. Tonight's story of suspense. The part of Mr. Parker was played by Martin Gable. Again next Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Wartime. A story dedicated to the thrill of the nighttime, the hushed voice and the prowling step. Another adventure in suspense. William Spear, the producer, John Dietz, the director, and John Dixon Carr, the author, are collaborators on Suspense.
This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
This has been a presentation of Eastland Radio Repertory Theater. For more information, go to eastlandradiotheater.weebly.com or email us at eastlandradiotheater@usa.com.